As adults, we find out, it seems, that peer pressure is not only for kids. There's a lot of expectation from others when it's time for you to eat your food. Are your friends influencing your food choices? Peer pressure is the cause of most unhealthy eating. Are you prepared?
Welcome to the Wellness Champion Podcast, sponsored by Healthy Transformation Nation. We believe that your health and wellness is determined by your own self-care more than anything else. Join us for each episode when we discover and uncover the keys to self-care in today's complex culture. We enjoy helping others discover the best ways to be well. We'll be visiting the basics for self-care and ongoing wellness that enables you to not only survive, but to thrive. Wellness Champion Podcast.
You have wellness goals. You have standards that you've set for yourself when it comes to eating. You want to be healthier. You're ready and able to take ownership of your changes. Then there are parties and barbecues and lunch meetings and social gatherings. Is everyone else at the party on the same page as you? Probably not. Most likely not. Pretty much a hard no.
That's so true. I have run across that so many times. I'll bet you have too.
Mm-hmm. I have. I used to attend a lot of church gatherings, and we would meet for Bible studies, and then we'd have the singles gatherings, and then we would have date nights where we'd, get together a group and everything that we had going on. Or sometimes we'd have a special event on Sunday and we'd have this big barbecue. And so there was always a lot of food around these gatherings. And then I can just tell you at family gatherings that the time that we got together the most were holidays and birthdays and all that stuff. And once again, it was very much surrounded by food. Food was the main theme of what bringing us all together, even though it was supposed to be the birthday party and celebrating or, the holiday. Food was huge impact for me in my life. As you guys know, a lot of my story, but just being thrown into these situations where I was working really hard on myself and I was working hard to eat a specific way. And it would get really challenging when I would have like mounds of all these different types of food in front of me. It was a lot of overwhelm, and also the parts of like people questioning, like, what are you having? And try this, and all of those types of feelings that were going through me.
Yes, there are cases where, whether it's at a family gathering and you have to try Uncle Gus's pulled pork, and if you don't, then, you're going to hurt his feelings. Right. To
Grandma's cookies and milk.
Oh, sure, Grandma's cookies and milk. Sure, yeah. But then there's also the situation where you're on the job and, there's a lunch meeting and lunch has been provided for you. Then there's the situation where, they're calling out for lunch and you have to pick from a menu that just does not seem to work. And there's a lot of the explanation. We seem to have the need to explain this to everyone because everyone expects an explanation. Why aren't you eating like they are?
Right.
What's different about you?
Exactly.
And, we know that the truth is there doesn't need to be an explanation. This is your food. You're putting it into your body. But we feel that need, and others feel the need to know.
Right.
So then we get into that situation where, sometimes it can feel awkward or uncomfortable.
Very
uncomfortable. Or, you feel like you're being, given the third degree.
Well,
the Inquisition.
Right, the peer pressure. That's really what it is, peer pressure.
So it comes down to peer pressure. And, there's a few things that we do that have helped us. And we'd like to share that with you. And one of these things is that, well, like we said, people have their own ideas about what's good and what's not. But always keeping in mind that your journey is your own.
Right.
And just need to be aware of other people's influence on you. Be aware of what other people say and do, how that affects you.
Yeah.
And, well, to put it bluntly, don't let it. I mean, I don't know. Can you think of any cases where someone has tried to influence your decision about
gosh,
what you're eating?
Of course.
Well,
I mean, just like the family stuff, like you were talking about that alone, like church friends, we're all together. Like, what do we're ordering pizza and it's like, what are you having? And things like that would happen to me a lot, even in work too, because they would buy pizzas again or subs for work. And that was not something that I specifically ate. So I would either choose something else completely different and get it on my own, or I'd have to prepare something ahead of time. And that the preparation, ahead of time, bringing your own stuff can almost make you seem like an outcast because you're doing that. Like, why aren't you part of everybody else, yummying down this pizza and soda and everything. And so I had that around a lot with work, church, and family.
Now, it's not always like that. I can remember sometimes when I had worked in an office at one point where, I had special, well, compared to others, I don't consider it to be special, but other people consider it to be special. Keep that in mind too.
Yes.
That when others think that your particular menu is special,
right.
To me, it's not. It's
right.
just what I eat.
Right.
But
exactly.
to them, it's special.
Right.
So when I have these special requirements, there have been some instances where people have been very supportive and said, "Oh yeah, well, when the menu comes out, someone will nice and put it in a very nice way, not being condescending or anything. Say, well, Bill has, a different way that he eats, and I can't remember exactly how they would put it, but how it doesn't matter how they put it. It's just that
right.
They were supportive.
Exactly.
But then there's the other case where, more often than not, it'll be like the eye rolls or, oh yeah, he's the health nut. Something like that, like being healthy is being nutty. I don't know. I mean, I it's not up to me to figure out what they're thinking. It's up to me just to continue on with what I'm doing for me.
Right.
And what their opinion is of being healthy is not my business. It's theirs. Right. That's their opinion.
Exactly.
And just let them have it. And a good idea, I think, is to be ready to answer their questions.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, for us, I think for you too, I hope I can speak for you as well when I say that it's just not a big deal.
No, it's not now. It used to be before when I was not as solid on the choice. It was maybe something I was newly embarking upon. And that's when it would be a lot more of a challenge, and where I could fall into the peer pressure and kind of cave. People be like, oh, it's only, one time, you're not doing this all the time. And actually giving me excuses to participate in the eating, which I find is so interesting, because if you think about what that means, what about other things in life people don't peer pressure you about? But when it comes to food, they will, because there's something about community, people gathering together to eat, that it is almost like a tribal thing, that everybody come together and eat together. But even if we're all eating together, we don't have to eat the same exact things. There is variety. That's the reason why, the variety is the spice of life, is that we can all choose. But it is amazing when you go outside of what everyone else is doing, that peer pressure is really there. And I was not prepared for questions. I didn't even want to talk about it. I was just wanted to keep things to myself when I was embarking in something new, because that's when people bring a lot of attention to you. And I'm the type of person that I don't like a lot of attention to me. I just want to, just do my thing, be in my space, and, that's it. And not have to be thinking about what I'm eating, how that's impacting somebody else and what their thoughts are, when it's really none of their business what I'm eating. It's mine, and I'm putting it in my body.
Yeah. Just like, and here's the thing too, just like the reciprocal is also true. It's really none of your business what they are eating.
No.
And so if they're eating something that you consider to be junk or, terrible, that you would not eat and that you would
Right.
would consider to be, actually offensive to your body. We need to keep that to ourselves.
Right.
That's their diet. That's their
Right.
that's their body. They're putting in food that they want to eat.
Now, sometimes I will have people that ask me questions
Yeah.
about, why are you doing this? And those, how are you feeling and all of that? Because there are some people that ask for their own sake.
Yeah.
And I always come from a place of what I went through, non-judgment, because what everybody's doing is their own business, like you just said. And if they have the questions, I know now that I have the knowledge. I know that I also have the resolve to actually guide people and instruct them and encourage them toward changing that part of their lifestyle if they wanted to, if they come to me with questions. And it's because I've been prepared for a while with the options of questions coming in and having to answer and the reasons why, and also having been certified as a wellness coach, that has made a difference as well. So I have a lot of information that if people really want to know and they're really genuinely interested, I'm there to also assist.
Yeah.
So the way I approach it now is very different. Before it was more from like a defensive place.
Yeah.
Where now it's more of just I'm open and I'm actually ready to have conversations with people. So that's evolution.
Yeah. So you are actually uniquely qualified to answer their questions. But for most of us who are not certified,
right.
wellness coaches, you can still answer questions, just in terms of your own journey.
Right.
Answer the questions honestly to do with your own journey and how you got to where you are.
Yeah.
And, maybe they'll come on board, maybe not, but that's up to them.
Exactly.
And so we don't want them to pass judgment on us, we don't want us to pass judgment on them.
Right.
Because
we don't want to create peer pressure for them either.
Right. It works both ways.
Right.
And just keep that in mind. So I think advice of the three things that we have to advise on, advice number one is to just simply be aware of how others influence you and how you can influence others and how that pressure works, that peer pressure, and it works both ways.
Right.
And so, just be aware of that and be ready to answer questions, but truthfully and from the perspective of your own journey.
Right.
And speaking of the journey, I'm going to try to segue this. Speaking of the journey, when you know that you're going, sometimes it's not ahead of time that like if someone all of a sudden says, yeah, we got to call out for lunch. Well, that's kind of impromptu and you didn't know it was coming. But if you know that you're going to a social gathering, if you know it's coming up ahead of time, then you can kind of mentally prepare yourself. And you can also be setting your boundaries. And doing it ahead of time is a good way to do that. Now, like, for example, if someone's inviting you to a dinner party and you have specific things that you will or won't eat, it can be awkward if they don't know that ahead of time. Right. But also it depends on how close you are with them and what your rapport is with your host, whether or not they know or not, and whether you have that conversation. It's really, it's kind of in a social situation, it can be kind of a tricky tightrope walk. But if they're a friend of yours, then typically you can have that conversation.
Oh yeah, we have actually had that conversation with our friends when we've gone over their house for barbecue. We've been invited, or they're having a gathering and they're going to order out. We just simply let them know that no worries, we'll bring our own food. We're all set.
Yeah, and most of our friends actually,
they know
our journey because we've had conversations about this in one form or another in the past, and so they're at least aware that we have a certain way that we eat that's different than the mainstream.
Right.
No processed foods. We avoid dairy, grains, and sugar. We just basically eat all whole foods. Right. And most of our friends know this ahead of time, and so they'll even ask us at this point when they're inviting us to go somewhere. They say, "Hey, are you okay with this? We're gonna be serving such and we're gonna be serving this thing here," and we'll say, "Yeah, maybe we'll just." avoid one thing that they have, but the other stuff is great. So don't change anything for us. We'll be fine.
Right.
And that works out really well. And it's very helpful that the boundary is set as part of, we're talking about boundaries.
Right.
And when you set boundaries, it's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries are sometimes thought of as like, well, a wall or a fence or something to keep people out or keep you from. But in this case, it's not really keeping someone out. It's just setting up the
expectation, I guess.
Expectation.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I mean, it is a boundary for us ourselves, but it's the expectation of how we're going to be, presenting ourselves, what we're going to be doing, and just having that communication. Because communication is key in any relationship. It doesn't matter whether it's family, friends, coworkers. If you have the communication up, you set the boundaries ahead of time, people actually kind of get to know you quickly because they look at your food choices that stands out from others. Yeah. So they're going to get it pretty quickly. And for those that don't want to observe those boundaries or whatever, that's on them. Yeah. You know who you are and what you're doing and what you feel comfortable with. And that's the most important thing with setting those boundaries.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Sometimes it is a talking point too.
Yeah, it is.
It's like a topic of conversation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it comes up all the time when we're out with friends at a gathering or something about mm-hmm. Our food choices right. and how we eat. Like it's like we're almost like sometimes it feels kind of like we are zoo animals and people are observing us. Like, oh, really? And how does that affect you? And how do you feel? And let me see. But it's sometimes it ends up being a topic of conversation. But careful in those conversations to keep your boundaries with them as well as setting them for yourself as well too, because you don't want to become overbearing mm-hmm. or impose your philosophies mm-hmm. upon someone else when they're not ready for it.
Right, because they'll ask. Yeah. They'll ask when they want to know that they're going to ask you. And
it almost seems like sometimes people are looking for that thing that they can. And I don't want to be negative on people. I love people, but sometimes people do look for that one thing that they can kind of latch onto that will be that negative point that they can drive in to say, oh yeah, this is why I don't do that. Mm-hmm. And I have noticed that some people are just, when they find that, they'll latch onto that one thing that would ruin it for them.
Yeah.
And they can't let go of it, which is, that's their journey.
I think my favorite line is, I can't live without cheese.
Oh,
that's really like the big one. And I understand that feeling because that was actually one of the things that I let go of last out of the dairy situation.
Oh, I totally understand that feeling.
Pizza.
My favorite food was pizza.
Right.
And I thought, I was a cheesehead. I don't live in Wisconsin, but I was a cheesehead. Right. And I just couldn't imagine life without cheese.
Right.
How could that be possible?
How could you?
Oh my goodness. But now I don't even think about it. It's not even a,
No, it's amazing what you focus on.
The cheese doesn't give to me. Cheese doesn't provide for me. Cheese, that's all. Dairy in general, it doesn't serve me. Yeah. And so therefore I've released that which does not serve me.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And it's as simple as that.
Exactly.
And there's no emotional attachment to it whatsoever.
Not anymore. That's for sure. Yeah. I definitely think that there was emotional attachment before, and that is part of why that peer pressure piece comes into play, because people can kind of bring you back to those emotional feelings that you had around that food. And I know for us now, that's not a struggle, but in the beginning, it very well was a struggle because we were trying to grasp that ourselves of these changes. So it's interesting that peer pressure can carry on for quite some time until you're absolutely resolved and this is the line and I'm all set. Yeah. That's where you don't feel the peer pressure anymore on that specific subject or situation or food or whatever it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Agreed. So here's another thing. So that other So advice number 2 is to set your boundaries and do it ahead of time if possible.
Right.
And advice number 3, if it's possible, bring your own food.
Right.
Sometimes you're expected to bring your own food.
You
like
are?
If it's a potluck or something
Right.
like that, or, which is great. I love doing that. I love
Me
bringing
too.
something healthy and delicious and wonderful to eat.
Yeah.
Other times, it's not expected. And in fact, if you brought your own, it could be perceived as an insult. So, you have to kind of weigh the situation.
Right.
But bringing your own is a wonderful way, especially if it's like lunch at work. I have had many, many times where there was a situation where there was a lunch meeting. I had already brought my lunch. I had it with me. I was ready to eat it. And in a past, if I look way in the past, I probably would have said, I can save that for another day.
Yes.
And then I can have something special today. But I reframed my thinking on that along the way. And it was perfectly fine to eat the lunch that I had intended on eating because that was a healthy choice that I had already made. And I was going to eat it. Just because there was going to be a free lunch didn't mean I had to take it.
Correct.
So, yeah, and I was fine with that. And I can recall a conversation that I had with the owner of a business who had provided lunch for everyone who was in attendance. And when I said that I had my own lunch and I wasn't going to partake in it, I could tell that he was a little bit like perhaps offended or just wasn't sure, like, maybe I don't want to receive this gift from him and that's a problem.
Right.
There was some tension there. So I did actually speak with him and I said, I eat a certain way that's different than most people. And I make particular choices about what I put in my body. And so I always bring my own, I always have my food,
Right.
Whole food. And so I hope you take no offense at it. This is the way I choose to eat. And it's nothing to do with you.
Right.
And he was like, "Oh, really?" And then he wanted to learn. Then he wanted to know more about how I was doing. And then he said, "Wow, that's really cool." And he has since asked me advice on things to do with that. So
Yep. It happens. It happens. I love bringing my own food because I know what's in it. And that's the most important thing for me is that if I'm going to eat food, I want to know exactly what the ingredients are, what's in it. And if I'm making it, I know that it's going to have everything that I really desire and that I want and that I have in my own lifestyle. So I'm going to be a very happy camper, which is really great. And my friends or, family or colleagues, they don't have to worry about me. They don't have to even think about me because I'm fully taken care of. And that also shows for myself a little bit of self-care and self-love that I am thinking ahead to make sure that my nutritional needs are being met. Now, there have definitely been times that I've gone places and I didn't have anything prepared ahead of time and there wasn't anything for me to eat.
Yep.
And that is the truth. That can happen sometimes.
Yep.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because I can drink water and I usually have like a mixed nuts in my car. So if I really, really wanted something to eat, I could. And the other thing is a lot of times when you're in a place where there's a lot of food, kind of a buffet style, there's usually vegetables or a salad. There's usually something that you can, have to eat if you really want it. And that's the thing. Am I really hungry right now? And having the awareness of, am I hungry? This is something that I could eat. All right, I'll have it. And feeling comfortable with that too. You can be in any situation around food and know that you are in charge of you. Not in charge of anything else but yourself. Like Bill and I were talking about earlier, what you want to take in is completely your business. You are at complete choice. Bringing your own food, own it, enjoy it, and people will probably ask because if you're eating something that is different, a lot of times the colors are different. So, and I mean, your food color is different. So I eat the rainbow a lot of times. So when people see this beautiful salad with all of these different types of vegetables in it, and some they may not even had before, they're like, I want that. What is in that? And they ask for the recipe. That can happen too. So there's really several advantages to bringing your own food. For one, you know what's in it. You've made it and prepared it. You might get some questions about it, and people may even want to try it too. And you're also opening people up to other choices as well, which I really love doing that.
Yeah. And if you do find yourself in a situation where you're at a restaurant, obviously you can't bring your own food to a restaurant. That would be frowned upon. So, and like you said, it's a situation where there actually wasn't anything on the menu that you could eat.
Right.
And that's happened. Mm-hmm. That has happened, mm-hmm. where there really wasn't anything on the menu that really appealed to me whatsoever. I didn't want to put that in my body.
Right.
And so usually what I've found is that in situations like that, it does cause a little uncomfortableness. Is that a word? Uncomfortableness?
Sure.
Yes. At the table. If everyone's eating and you're not, even though you don't feel left out, you're fine. Mm-hmm. It makes the other people at the table feel uncomfortable because, mm-hmm. Etiquette says that, you shouldn't eat until everyone is served, and that if someone is not eating, that there's an issue there. Like there's that, mm-hmm. Not only etiquette, but just simply, I don't know, human need,
tribal thing, right?
Tribal thing where we need to take care of this person.
Right.
So what I found is that you usually can find something like maybe an herbal tea, or I like rooibos tea. That's my favorite.
You do.
Get a cup of tea or something like that, or maybe a bowl of broth. Usually the kitchen can make you a bowl of just plain broth, mm-hmm. Where you can have your bowl of broth or sip your tea, and that puts everyone at ease. Mm. And so that's a little trick that I've found, that I can usually find something, like even if it's something to drink, like mm-hmm. something special to drink, like tea or something, where it's something on my place setting in front of me that occupies that space, and it makes everyone happy.
Great.
Yep.
I like that. All right, so we've talked about 3 things today. 3 things. We talked about being prepared for people to have their own ideas about what you should eat, and be ready to answer their questions. That's kind of a tie-in. And you want to set boundaries ahead of time, if possible, with the individuals that you'll be spending time with, and for yourself as well. And then bring your own food whenever possible. That's a huge one that you can do. And we've also given you some tips and strategies for when you're not able to do that, and how you can feel comfortable and ease other people in their peer pressure of you. So join us at htnforyou.com. HTN, the number 4, and the letter U.com, where you can find affirmations, recipes, and a magnificent community full of like-minded individuals that focus on wellness for their life. We'll see you at htnforyou.com.